our core values, if you go to our website, they're right there front and center: diversity, inclusion, innovation, and excellence. And at this time, more than ever, in times of crises, and when we find ourselves more divided than we are united, it's more important that we lean on those core values. Today's webinar and next week's webinar is a prime example of leaning on our core values in times of challenges. IGRU continues to work diligently to fulfill not just our core values, but our intent and our purpose. With over 60 national governing body members, over 5 different continents, IGRU continues to grow and develop our sport. IGRU is also an observer to GACE, which we recently have been renewed for another 2-year term, which we're tremendously excited about. And that's in no small part due to all of your work. So we want to thank you, all the NGBs, who continue to support us in this effort. But also an example of our core values at work is our continued work with the entire international sporting community. IGRU participates with the AIMS Association, which is another part of the entire sports family. We also are participating in the One Humanity Project, which is a unifying concept through the work of GACE and also with the United Nations to continue to affirm humanity. And IGRU is very happy to participate in that as well. So again, today and next week, as we continue to work through our core values at work, our sport and our family continues to move forward. And that's exactly what our sports is. It is a family. And I want to thank you all for being a part of our family. I want to thank you all for continued working diligently. Speaking of working diligently, our board of directors works diligently, and especially our working group, they work diligently to evaluate where we stand as a sport and what our future plans are. Currently, our working group and board are at work evaluating our 2021 championships, what that will mean going forward, and how that will look and how we can better support you all. Of course, that also includes us looking at our risk and our own financial strategies to not only survive, but to thrive. In this time that we are in, I do believe that our sport is uniquely positioned to actually move forward. Even though we're not able to come together in traditional forms or fashions, our sport, I think, is uniquely positioned to continue to help our athletes and garner more participants as people find themselves in isolation. We do ask all of our members and participants to continue to be involved, to be engaged, to respond to the calls from the board, to be involved. We have several opportunities, one being the Youth Development Commission. We ask you all please get involved and be involved with that. Our Athletes Council, which is coming quite soon. We'll be sending out information about that. Again, we ask you all to be involved. All the surveys that we send out, again, it's very important that you be involved because we want to hear from you. We do value your input. And again, all the other committees and commissions that we ask folks to be involved with, we certainly would like to see and hear from you. So please do not be shy and to torture a pun, feel free to jump in, all right? So feel free to jump in and get involved. We will be sending out a survey at the end of this panel today that talks about this panel, but also to hear your thoughts about options for the future, whether that be virtual tournaments, whether that be in-person tournaments, whatever that looks like. We want to hear from you. Please continue to respond to the call. Within around 60 to 90 days, we will be soliciting a general virtual Congress. We will convene our delegates together to continue the furtherance of our business in the sport. So when these things come out, we certainly want you to be involved because we care what it is that you have to tell us. Again, I want to thank everyone for all your participation. And in times of crises, family does come together, and to see the outpouring of everyone coming together does my heart warm. So I want to thank you all for allowing us to come together in this time. With that being said, I'm going to hush my mouth and I'm going to turn it over to one of our hosts here for today. our hoster for today. Her name is Amy Simpson. For some of you all recognize her. She is a former athlete, but beyond being a former athlete, she is a qualified news anchor. In fact, I've seen some of her clips. She's quite good. So I want to excited to introduce to some and reintroduce to others former athlete and U.S. national champion and news anchor, Amy Simpson. Amy Simpson.
Sean, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. I'm here on the East Coast of the U.S. Good evening if you're watching from elsewhere in the world. It's great to see all of you. It's been great to see people logging in. Feel free to pull up the chat bar on the side of your screen here. You can see other names joining in. I recognize a couple of people, so great to see familiar faces or names as well. And with that chat function today, please feel free to chime in and let us know if there's any questions that you have, if there's something you'd like to hear a little bit more about from one of our panelists, or if you have a question that a topic that we haven't brought up. And also please let us know where you're watching from, where you're tuning in from. We'd love to see the international component of our conversation today. So again, my name is Amy Simpson. I am a former competitive jump rope athlete for about 10 years of my life. I'm now a news anchor and reporter here in the US. So I do have a deep understanding of the sport, the competitive aspect of the sport on the international level, competed both in Canada and South Africa more than a decade ago, but I am still very much deeply understand the sport, what's at stake here, and also just deeply understand the effect of COVID-19 on our whole world and everything, every aspect of our everyday lives. So I'm excited to have this conversation. Hopefully we can all take something positive away from it and learn something today. So with that being said, would love to introduce our panelists and learn where they're from and their background and what they're bringing to the table today. So Denise, would you be able to introduce yourself and just give us a couple of sentences about yourself?
Good morning, my name is Denise Fisher, and I grew up in the sport of jump rope a little bit more than 10 years ago. We're looking a little closer to 30. I currently am the coach of Jump Rope Revolution, which is a new club forming in Edmonton in Canada. I'm bringing a background as a coach, a competition official, but I've also worked in the Canadian amateur sports system from playground to podium for over 20 years.
Wonderful. Denise, welcome. Thank you. Good morning, Warren.
Good morning.
Hi there.
Hi, Warren Harper. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. So good morning, good evening to everybody. My background, I'm a former athlete as well, not jump rope, but basketball and athletics from many years ago. But my background, I've been in the insurance and risk management industry for more than 35 years, formerly risk manager of the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, and I've basically worked on every Olympic Games since then, straight through the Beijing 2022. So risk mitigation, risk management, insurance is what I bring to the table, related to sports, of course.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Look forward to hearing your perspectives. Dale, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Amy, and good morning to all. I'm in Indianapolis, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you. I am not from the sport of jump rope. I'm from the sport of swimming, and serve as vice president of the International Swimming Federation, and have been involved with the U.S. Olympic Committee, USA Swimming, and U.S. Aquatic Sports over a number of years. So I'm pleased to be a part of this. I've had an association with the International Jump Rope Union and President Hamilton for a few years, and have great respect for the sport and look forward to doing this morning. Thank you.
Dale, thanks so much. We'll head to Luke now, down under.
How are you, Amy? I'm Luke Wynn, Stanley from Canberra, the nation's capital in Australia. I was co-opted into the sport with a couple of my young daughters. And I guess for the first 2 years, I was an interested participant, and then somehow fell into local, regional, national, and then international assistance with our sport. I'm a business consultant by trade, and whilst I don't know the difference between a 2 or 3 jump rope trips, which I can't even think to name at this point in time, I try to help out where I can in administration and business processes. So I've been fortunate enough to be involved at the FISAC board level, and then across at the IJE board level. I'm very excited about being involved.
Wonderful, Luke. Thank you so much. And Nika, are you there?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Nika, I'm 18 years old, and I want to work more for jump rope for population our favorite sport. Thank you for invite.
Absolutely. And I believe Nika is joining us from Russia today.
Yes, I'm from Russia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Is there anybody that I missed? I think I hit.
I just think Andre, maybe.
Yeah. Oh. Hi,
Andre, go ahead.
Hello everybody. Andre Casellica. I've been involved in the sport first as much like Luke as a parent, and then a judge. This is a coach for a few years, and then get involved in competition structure organization with World Jump Rope. Do a lot of the software and systems work there, and then more recent years got involved in a lot of the in facility and online production, so live streams, lighting, cameras, and all that sort of things. So been involved with that and really enjoying that aspect of the sport as well. So that's the perspective I bring up. My background is I've been in software for quite a few years. So that's come from a technology standpoint.
Wonderful. Andre, thank you so much. And I see people commenting in on the side. We have somebody watching from Colorado. Welcome, Suzanne. Takashi, great to see you in Sydney. And we have somebody watching from India today. So we have the international aspect here. It's great to see everybody. So keep those coming and keep the questions rolling as well. But would love to jump right in and get this conversation going. So our topics today are going to range from practice guidelines, risk mitigation, and digital strategies. So we're covering a whole range of topics today. But I would love to start with Denise. As we were doing some preps for this conversation today, we had gone back and forth about some topics and some questions. And Denise made a really interesting point in our email chain about how moving jump rope skipping, and sport forward in our current climate, the responsibility does not stand on one person. It does not stand on a coach. It does not stand just on the athlete. How it's really a shared responsibility to increase safety for everybody going forward. So Denise, I would love to hear your perspective on that and your thoughts about moving forward safely.
Thank you, Amy. As I mentioned, it is a shared responsibility, and having spent many years in the sport of rope skipping, we've often seen that there's a very, very heavy reliance on the coach to set the directions for the club. And this is a wonderful time for a lot of clubs to reevaluate how they're working within their club structure, and for the club boards and executives or owners or management team, depending on how the club is structured, to step forward and develop some really strong return to sport guidelines, which will assist the coaches in creating that safe environment for all of their participants. It's a time where we don't necessarily need to jump right back into traditional practices in preparation for competition, but really it's a time to make sure that everybody understands what their role is in creating this safe environment. And that can start early in the year with the use of virtual club meetings to emphasize the core values of the club, what their priorities, plans, and visions are. We really want to create that culture of safety and wellness, and that needs to be a priority. Not just, we've talked a lot, and with COVID, there's a lot of discussion about physical wellness, but we need to make sure that we're putting an equal emphasis on mental wellness, both in returning to practices and into competitions. So some of the considerations with these guidelines, we want to make sure that we are making changes to our first aid protocols. Simple things like instead of coaches normally having one mask on hand and gloves in their first aid kit, we want to make sure that they have two sets of masks on hand at all times, one for themselves and one for the athlete if they need to treat the athlete in the event of an injury. So some simple changes, but helping to communicate with all of the club members and stakeholders in advance will really help. And with that, we want to make sure that we never lose emphasis on safe sport, making sure that coaches remain open and observable, particularly if we have to look at restricting access to gymnasiums. And an emerging best practice that we're seeing in the amateur sport community is things like the integration of a safety protocol volunteer, which can be a volunteer within a club who doesn't necessarily come from a coaching background, but is able to help with some of the safety protocols that we need to put in place as a result of COVID. Things like completion of daily health attestations prior to the start of a practice. And I think part of the overall cultural change is making sure that we're adjusting our practice plans and cycles to allow for an athlete to openly declare an illness, whether it be COVID or another one that has similar symptoms, and using different strategies to prepare our alternates. So there's a lot of different elements that need to be considered in return to sport guidelines, but I think if we can get these developed well, then our clubs will be better positioned to have healthy return to sport experiences.
And with, you were talking about the first aid kit and having those on hand, those are simple things to do. But what about in terms of any sort of shared equipment? I think automatically going to, practicing double dutch with 3 to 4 other people, sharing handles of ropes. And what are your thoughts on any cleaning protocols and implementing those types of safety practices?
Yeah, it's obviously going to be a really important component, and I think the first recommendation is to cease the use of cloth ropes, which are more difficult to clean. There's been a lot of discussion about cleaning handles, and I'm a little cautious there, because when you in double dutch, it's not just the handles that come into contact with the athletes. Ideally, there's no misses, but in training there are, and athletes are hitting full lengths of their body with the ropes. So the entire ropes themselves need to be cleaned. I think it goes beyond just sanitizing handles on double dutch ropes. We know our athletes come into practices with grip tape on many of their speed and freestyle ropes. That grip tape is extremely difficult to clean properly. And we need to be establishing things like checklists where when athletes or coaches or other volunteers are preparing for practice, they've gone through the checklist to make sure that equipment has been properly cleaned. It also identifies the responsibility for athletes to take care of their own ropes. If we have volunteers like the safety protocol volunteers, what is their responsibility in making sure items like the clickers or counters are cleaned properly, that we have the Ziploc or designated bags for each rope set on hand. And we've heard some sports in Canada talking about not just quarantining of individuals, but we're going to quarantine our equipment that's difficult to clean until the risk of any germs being transmitted is passed along. So there's a few different areas that can be looked at beyond just the initial concerns about the double dutch handles or other shared handles.
Of course, Denise, thank you so much. Warren, I would love to pull you into this conversation as we talk about risk and how to mitigate that risk associated with this virus when we have athletes in close contact, coaches in close contact with one another. I think of competitive jump rope skipping as in many ways we are less than 6 feet apart from one another. So can you talk to us a little bit about what's at stake here and what different factors of risk mitigation we need to be considering?
Yeah, sure. And some of my comments actually will mirror what Denise is saying, because it runs right along the same track, actually. I think one of the first things within the whole construct of approaching this thing from a risk management perspective would be to extremely close collaboration with public health authorities, local public health authorities, World Health Organization, the various Centers for Disease Control that are spread around the world, to be as up to date as possible on what the medical information is concerning the spread of the virus, how it spreads, how long it will stay on various types of surfaces, because that's changed over time. And we're learning more about the virus as we go forward. So I would say this is all my comments are within the construct rather of the collaboration and interaction with public health authorities. In terms of things Denise was talking about, and personal protective equipment, the mask, the gloves, making sure that that's adequate for all of the athletes, of course, and also trainers, coaches, physical therapists, and the rest. One We recommend what we're calling a COVID-19 health and safety assessment. So to hear about a safety protocol officer is critical to that type of process. Testing of the athletes, pre-event, health declarations, but also testing when they're coming in for competitions, temperature screening, those types of things, and monitoring them during the period of time. But even before the competition starts, we're working with some organizations that are obviously groups like Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, the NBA are creating this bubble environment around their attempts to restart their seasons, and it's an experiment. But that bubble goes beyond just when they arrive at the venue to even transport. We're working with one organization that's global in nature as well, and they're actually looking at, believe it or not, chartering private flights to bring their athletes and executives and coaches and all to a competition. So they create the bubble from the point of departure in their home country right straight through to accommodations, transport to and from the venues to their return to the home site. So, consideration of that where it would be practical, for IJRU, excuse me, as we move forward. The facilities and the venues themselves, reconfiguring those to try to maintain social distancing outside the competition area as much as possible, and changing facilities, things of that nature. When you're looking at trying to restart competition sessions, looking at the use of the facility. Been involved in a few situations this year where events had to be canceled or shifted, and it came down to a review of the contract, where organizations are financial risk because, venue agreements have been signed, contracts have been signed. Well, what is the force majeure clause within that contract? Does it address the issue of epidemics and pandemics so you can back out and shift and recoup your funds? I have a whole list of things I could talk about and go on here. So I'll try to keep my comments brief. But overall, I think that the medical, the screening, the temperature checks, protocols on that, protocols from a response perspective. If someone does have a high temperature or is exhibiting symptoms, what happens there from a contract tracing perspective and a quarantine perspective on that athlete? So I think the documentation of processes and procedures in real time, and developing again that link with the medical community rather, to where we can track the outbreak and the progress of the virus and be up to date on the latest information available. So I'll stop there.
Warren, one follow-up question too. I know you mentioned the bubble environment, which has been fun and interesting to watch that evolve online on social media. What are other sports, other than basketball, doing to get over this hurdle of moving forward in this really difficult, whole new challenging environment?
It's very difficult. Catering, meals, after the competition, going out for a meal is kind of gone by the wayside for the time being. So you're having meals catered, brought into hotels and accommodation facilities or the venue. I would say here, from my personal experience, you have to also check the caterers and check that supply chain to see what their safety protocols are, as well. But it's extremely difficult at this point in time. Again, the pro sports, the bubble is an experiment. A lot of other sports are trying to go virtual. I heard the comments about a virtual competition, and if we look at the way the resiliency of the virus and the fact that you're getting second and third surges in areas of the world where we thought it was under control, I mean, the virtual option, quite frankly, may be the way to go, because it could be quite a while into late first quarter or second quarter of next year before things are really tapped down so we can reach whatever the new normal will be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the emphasis on virtual is more because we have people of all ages participating in this sport in particular, whereas we see the bubble environment with professional athletes. They're adults, they can do that. But if we have young children that's not an option. So it's definitely a different scenario when we have athletes ranging in age from, maybe 5 or 6 all the way to 56. So it's definitely a different environment there.
Yes.
But thank you so much for your perspective. I'd love to turn now to Dale as we bring up these topics of going virtual. That brings in the conversation then of using technology and even today we're able to use this chat session, this virtual panel to meet from all over the world. So there's a lot of technology at our fingertips. So Luke, Andre, anybody else who would love to pipe in on this as well. How can we use the tools at our hands, many of them for free, to be able to make this a reality, going forward virtually and being physically distant? So whoever would like to pipe in on that.
I'll quickly jump in, Amy, if that's all right.
Of course.
I guess Denise and Warren gave some really good examples there of some large-scale sports and the macro activities that are occurring. The bubble, isolation, and that sort of business. And I guess I'm part of the national governing body here in Australia. We leaned heavily on our national sporting organisation, the Ausport. And I'm hoping that the rest of the world has had similar national sporting organisations that reached out and provided support to the rest of their global community, in that they produced a series of checklists and the like. And from our perspective at the regional, state and national level, we weren't sure where to look. We didn't know which questions to ask. And so we went to those national governing bodies, and those ones put out a series of guidelines and checklists. And I'd offer that as a really good start, because if you're at the regional or local level and you don't know what you should be asking because you're not a health professional or you're a good sports administrator or a good coach, it gave us a lot of good conversation starters. And then we sent those around for everybody to have that information as a, if you're not sure where to start, this is a really good landing point.
Great.
I'd also add on to what Lou said as well in terms of looking at how the sport's enabled by technology is. I don't think that you're going to see like a major change in direction here. I think it's going to accelerate a lot of the trends we've already seen, right? Like I think that being able to engage remote participants and people that have more of a casual interest in the sport, that's been a journey that IGRU and previous organizations have been on for quite some time, right? And I think that this just probably pushes us forward 5 to 10 years in the course of a year or two in trends that were already happening, right? So, and you see other sports doing this as well, right? I just saw yesterday the NBA, playing in empty arenas now is setting up large screens where the fans, instead of sitting in seats, will be in boxes on sides of the screens, right? So how do you bring the virtual into the physical and the physical into the virtual? I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg on that. We're going to see a lot of innovation. The sports are on that next year.
Yeah, I think Andre's point is well made there that, we've probably played the sport the way we've played it for the last 15 or 20 years. And uniquely and unfortunately, or fortunately as the case may be, we've got a brand new opportunity to reinvent the way in which we play sport and the way in which our sport is played, demonstrated and showcased across the globe.
I agree with that very much. I would say that professional leagues, Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, all have a particular model that is because of the nature of the franchises and the players and the league itself. But for competition in other sports like jump rope and my sport in swimming, I look at the ability to do these virtual events as really an opportunity. It's come about as a result of a tragic situation of the virus worldwide. But the opportunity to do these virtual competitions is now we're seeing in sports like track and field, like swimming, where in weightlifting in particular, where we're able to do some things that we've never done before and also take away some of the costs and some of the, I'm going to say, the wear and tear, so that athletes who might be going to an international competition, changing time zones and all the travel that goes along with that, and readjustment coming home. Some of those things will disappear by necessity. But the ability to do some things virtually and to be able to have some pretty exciting competition and to do it in a unique way, I think we have to look at it as an opportunity rather than just something that we're forced to do. Look at ways to make it exciting and make it something that both the athletes look forward to and that we can grow the spectator base for the sport. And I think that's the opportunity that comes from the virtual competition element.
Mm. You're right, Dale. My 13-year-old is much more technically savvy than I ever was, and I currently am. And they are willing to embrace that change. This may well be an opportunity for us to investigate that real possibility of virtualization, not just our national and international tournaments, but a whole new league.
I think we've seen, several of you made this point, almost an overnight change in the use of technology. And I think that COVID-19 has been a disruptor in, so many aspects of life, in how we do our grocery shopping, and how we socialize with our friends, how we communicate with family. But I dislike saying that there's a silver lining to this, but I think one positive that we can take away is that it really has forced people to tap into technologies that maybe there was a fear of using, or the fear of change. It's like, we've all overnight been forced to adapt in ways that we maybe had never even considered. So that is one positive I hope that we can take away from this. We did actually just get an interesting question from Anil. He's asking, how do we create an inclusive virtual tournament? Many jumpers still do not have access to appropriate flooring to use speed and power ropes. So for anybody who's had these virtual practices, when we're talking about how people can really maybe practice their craft at home, if they maybe don't have the right equipment to make it happen. So for those of you who have done virtual practicing and physically distant practicing, how has that worked, and what are the obstacles that have been overcome for that? Is Nika there? I think Nika was doing some.
Yes, I'm there. So in Russia, our guys just do their practice at home, and if they don't have some flooring, it's not a problem. I think that they can do in their own rooms, or somebody goes outside and jump on the playgrounds like this. And this is not a problem. We had really fun trainings, and last trains, it will be like surprise for our athletes. We invite Luke Boone, Nick Woodard, and Kaylee Woodard, and Adrian for like little workshop. And our guys was so surprised because some people from our team just don't have opportunity to go to some world championship or like these events. And of course, they was shocked that these superstars of our sport can train together, and this was really good. And I think after this training, a lot of our athletes said that, yeah, I want do like their guys, and they start to training more powerfully, and this was really good motivation for they.
And so, Nika, what kind of tools actually with the technology? Is it an app? Are you using a software similar to software or Microsoft Teams? Are you using Zoom? How are you able to make that happen?
Yes, we used Zoom. So when in Russia said that start self-isolation, our coach said, okay, don't problem. We need to progress, and we start like test training in Zoom. We had some moves. For example, we do like this if everything is good, and this is just wrong, that somebody don't understand or have some question, and we don't turn on the microphone because the photo will be changed, and of course it will be more comfortable. And we train in like our simple training. We had some speed training, also freestyle training like this, and it was really good. What about sounds? Our coach just turned on her phone, and everybody's heard this, and this wasn't a problem. And a lot of our athletes broke their records of 30 seconds. This is so good.
I'm so glad to hear that's been a positive experience for you all. I hope that it continues to be, and I'm excited to see more people turn to these virtual practices. And I like the concept of a virtual workshop, because even the cost of that will be so much less, not needing to fly somebody in to do a workshop in that regard. So that can increase access as well, and more people can be included. For anybody else who's used any specific technology or apps, would love to hear about how those can be utilized to move this sport forward in our current environment. I'm not sure if maybe Andre has any insight on that.
Yeah, well, I think that there's you know, a few apps out there that are virtual clickers. I think what we're starting to see is more integration of like fitness tracking, like smartwatches and those kinds of things, right? And the integration of those things with social has become interesting, right? Because it creates that accountability and that network, right? I think also some teams and clubs I've heard are you know, doing called leaderboards, or you know, having online ways to track progress and goals that kind of create the social aspect of the team, yet let you practice and work individually. So yeah, the key is the connectedness, right? I think that as we were talking about before, it's about keeping that club atmosphere and that support, even though we're not able to be together in person. The other thing we're seeing in you know, with the IGRU perspective is already we're seeing that it's going to create a tighter relationship between the international organization and the NGBs, right? Because the situation is different in every country, and it's very hard for us to make decisions at the country level in terms of competitions. So we can already see that, you know, we're still figuring out exactly what 2021 will look like, and a lot will change before then. But I think we know for sure is that we're going to rely more strongly than ever on our partners in each individual country to adapt things to their environments, make sure things are safe where they are, because what works in Europe might not work in Asia, and you know it changes day to day, right? So that's the other aspect, is it's just connectedness at every level.
Absolutely. I'd love to pull Dale back into the conversation and hear about unique challenges and how to overcome them, because I think of swimming too as having such unique challenges, to be able to practice first and foremost if people don't have a pool, but then the physical distancing and the cleaning protocols, and so can you speak more to you know, what the aquatics world is doing right now and how virtual practice is even an option?
Well, it's been a very interesting time, because for swimmers, it's all about being in the water. It's not about you know, the physical strength or even flexibility and so on. To the largest extent, it's still the muscle memory of doing things repetitively over and over again, yards and meters every day. You know, the interesting thing that's happened is that now, because athletes were not able to get into pools, that a whole new group of dry land exercises and fitness related activities for swimmers have come into play. And you know, swimmers traditionally have been perhaps not the most athletic people in terms of being able to do things on land. And so they've maybe avoided some of the things that would be part of the rigor of athletes in basketball or football or other sports. this whole dry land element, because they're not able to get in pools. We have everyday workouts that are challenging and that athletes have never done before. And they're going across sports, again, doing things like Pilates and yoga, also jump rope and CrossFit and other activities that swimmers have never done. And so what we're finding out now is swimmers are getting back in the water. They're actually doing times that they have done previously, or even better. It's really an amazing process to see some of the progress that athletes have made during this difficult time period, because they're doing something different and challenging their bodies in different ways. And so I would say too, with jump rope, that the ability to obviously jump rope is something you can do individually as well as in small groups, but it's also a time to perhaps test other fitness related activities and to do things that take you out of the norm. And I think that's been the biggest element for the teams that are now back in the water. Very strict protocol, working with public health officials. Each club needs to have a plan, as Warren would indicate too, that shows how to parents as well as public health officials how safety measures are being implemented. But I think the interesting time, and as I say, what's interesting for me is the opportunity that out of everything that's negative related to COVID, maybe there are some things that we learn about ourselves in terms of doing things that are outside of our comfort zone, outside of what we've done before, and perhaps achieve a level of fitness that allows you to be a better jump roper than you've ever been before.
Hear that, and I love to hear about the almost being forced to cross train in ways that you said, oh, I don't need to do that. And, maybe your body will come back stronger and better and more capable of swimming longer, or, just a totally different level of fitness. So I love to hear that they're making the best of that. We have gotten some interesting comments here on our chat bar. Suzanne is asking about the challenges related to doing things virtually and videos and it being intimidating and trying to teach and learn virtually and those challenges. And on another level with the virtual training and virtual competitions, Denise is commenting and saying that virtual trainings and competitions are not covered by insurance in Canada. So Denise, I'd love to hear about that challenge, and maybe one of our other panelists could comment on that impact and maybe how to overcome that.
Well, as I mentioned, it's specifically related to the clubs that are insured under Rope Skipping Canada's insurance. So it's been a learning in the Canadian sport community that it's not covered under insurance unless it's specifically included. With there being many reasons for that, we do need to be careful about the types of surfaces, the supervision, and the types of interactions that we are having with the athletes as coaches. I included a link in the chat box to how our Coaching Association of Canada recommends responsible coaching strategies when coaching in a virtual environment to make sure, again, that it's safe for all participants. But it's something to check for any club before participating in virtual training or competitions, is to make sure that there is insurance coverage, particularly for the coaches who are leading the sessions.
For sure. Warren, do you have some insight there on insurance and if it's not covered under your current policy, what are next steps? What are other options?
It's a new environment. So we've never done this virtual type of training or competitions before. So I could see an insurer trying to say it's not covered, because it's a brand new exposure, and the whole world of insurance is based on prior experience. So when you have nothing prior to base it on, it becomes a real challenge. But I made a note of that, and actually I'll do some checking on it. That's one I don't have an answer for, because it is brand new, and it's the first time I've heard about it not potentially being covered under insurance. It's an interesting mix, they, because insurers are looking to exclude potentially, injuries to athletes and things of that nature. On the other side, the fact that things are being held virtually, you don't have the risk from spectators being injured. So the liability insurance is going down, while potentially the accident insurance for the athletes is being excluded. But that's one, I'll take a note of that and check with some insurers, because it should be, in my mind, it should be insurable. The question will be, at what price and under what conditions. But I think that's a challenge that we can overcome, actually.
And that seems similar to a lot of the challenges that even employers are facing right now with the thought of bringing employees back into the workplace. Are there similarities there?
There are similarities there, yes. In terms of, the workers' compensation insurance here in the States, and working, talking to those insurers and making sure there's not an exclusion. The issue oftentimes is that insurance policies are silent on these types of exposures. And so as soon as insurance companies become aware of it, they'll want to slap an exclusion on it. But with safe guidelines, for, returning to work, return to competition or virtual competitions, if we can educate the insurance companies about the guidelines that are being put in place, then again, I think that's something that we can actually get them to affirmatively insure and cover.
Wonderful, thank you.
It may be, Amy, this is a good example of an opportunity for us to pivot, for us to think about our sport in a different way. So, for example, we might have had, in Australia, we've had 3 months off. We can't go straight back to a heavy training load. That's how people will get injured. And so coaches and administrators and supporters need to think about the way in which we reintroduce our sport such that we can protect it into the future. And it may well be people like, the people who are on this very call here who have an interest in catching some of those metrics and then coordinating that across our sport for part of the intelligence of our sport as we move forward. So, if it might have been that one of us was training or our athletes were training 4 days a week and then we stopped and we went straight back to 4 days a week training, I would just about guarantee that someone is going to hurt themselves. And so we need a strategy for that. And I haven't seen strategies that have come out of our national sporting bodies, but maybe that's an opportunity for us to think about that from a medical perspective, from a governance perspective. And IJRU may be able to lean into that space and help our national governing bodies come up with some strategies about that sort of activity.
Another aspect of that would relate to Andre and the technology side, because if you have the athletes having wearable technology that can track, their performance, then that's the type of information that we can go to an insurance markets with and say, here's some data, because big data will drive the response of the insurance community.
Very interesting perspective. We have a lot of great interaction happening on our chat bar on the side. There's some concern from several people about, with these challenges with everything being virtual right now, about the focus and the emphasis being on the most elite and the highest tier of athletes, and there being less focus, less attention on the youngest generation, the newest generation of this sport. So how are we as a community able to overcome that and still be able to foster the love of the sport, the practice of the sport for our youngest jumpers and rope skippers?
I'll speak from another sport perspective with it. I think jump rope has a unique opportunity because it's an incredible fitness activity. And I think that as athletes in various sports are looking at ways to both stay fit and build fitness, they're turning to activities and sports like jump rope. Now we have a whole new group of people who are engaged in the sport who have never done so before. And part of that challenge then is to try to convert those fitness activities then into organized competitive activities and the activities related to both national governing bodies and the IJRU. I think this is a really good chance to take the fitness element of jump rope and try to then transform it for participants who are doing it perhaps for the first time, or perhaps for the first time in a long time, where they're doing jump rope, and make that into something that builds and promotes the sport. Because my guess is, and I can say this from certainly my sport perspective, people who are doing jump rope as part of now a fitness regimen are really not aware of jump rope as a competitive sport.
Agreed.
And that linkage, I think if there's some thought as to how that linkage can take place, because there's a lot of young people who are jumping rope right now who've never done it before, and if there's a way to turn them into competitive jump ropers, that would be terrific, and that's part of the challenge, I guess.
I think too, social media is the thing that connects us all, regardless of where we are, how old we are, and what our sport is. And I hope that social media can connect swimming athletes with jump rope athletes, with basketball athletes, anybody who's using that to cross train right now. But that is a very great point. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I'm going to have a brief proud mother moment. My daughter qualified this year to represent Canada in the International Triathlon Union's World Championships in the age group division. And what we could see over the past year was an incredible change in, I'd say, her fundamental physique, because of the opportunities to cross-train in swimming and cycling, which we know don't have the same level of impact on her joints as rope skipping. So we were able to build a stronger athlete and person by using some less traditional training techniques. And I think the same goes, as Dale mentioned, for athletes in other sports. We have a bit of an opportunity there as well to introduce rope skipping as a training opportunity. And we know that athletes don't need to come into the sport at the age of 10. If they're a strong athlete in another sport, as a 15 to 18-year-old, they can easily transition into the sport of jump rope as long as they have that strong athletic background. So there's some interesting opportunities that are presenting themselves, and the opportunities to cross-train. Sports are looking for new opportunities. Athletes are getting tired of virtual training. We have a chance to introduce something new through jump rope. So there's some different opportunities that exist there, and I think it's a great time to be creative and look for partnerships with other sports as well.
I'm seeing somebody comment, I think it's Suzanne, she's saying, my jumpers are learning, even though they worked out during this break, during this time off, jump rope shape is nothing like regular in shape. And I can attest to that. As a former jump rope athlete, will never be able to get back to that shape. It's incredible. Another interesting topic that Anil brought up, and I know that this is a huge battle in more rural parts of the U.S. here, and I imagine all over the world, is the access to internet, and that many people are still struggling with a strong connection, if they have a connection at all. And that is a huge barrier to being able to practice virtually, maybe compete virtually. Andre, do you have any insight into that, into some workarounds with that challenge?
Yeah, in terms of virtual competitions, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that there's multiple formats and multiple styles of virtual competition. I think that we're going to see a lot of innovation on that over the next year, and it's hard to kind of know exactly where that's going to evolve, right? I think speed and freestyle, for example, are very different dynamics in terms of what a virtual competition can do. And also, how do you make it engaging and fun to participate? How do you make it work with judges, right? Like, just the logistics get really complicated if you would try to scale something like a large international competition. So I think we're seeing a lot of innovation in the NGBs right now, and as IGRU, I think it's going to give us opportunity to learn a lot about what works, where things can be improved. Also, I said earlier, how do you make it engaging and enjoyable to watch online? Because I think people don't just compete to get a score, right? They compete for recognition, for visibility, to meet other people. How do you bring those aspects of the competition into the online realm, into a virtual competition? It's not really just enough to record a video and send it out, right? Like people want to get acknowledgement. They want to be seen. They want to see others. And also, how do you make it accessible? We were talking about, challenges in terms of, flooring and competition space and technology and money, right? Is how do you not make this just accessible for the upper tier organizations, NGBs that can afford to invest, right? So, and I wish I had all the answers for that, right? I think we're going to learn a lot over the next year in terms of how to do that successfully, and it's not going to, I think, be a one size fits all. I think we're gonna find some new things. One example of kind of a lot of discussions happening right now is, our sport is always valued, the clutch performer, right? Somebody that can walk into the floor and perform under pressure in one shot, right? And in a virtual competition, what does that look like, right? Like submitting a video of my routine, do we lose that one shot aspect of the sport, or how important is that relative to the inclusivity of giving people a chance to try again, or just deal with technology issues or flooring issues. So I think those are all things that we're considering right now, and I don't think we're going to come up with one answer. I think we're going to come up with a lot of different ideas and formulas, many of which I think will work.
Absolutely. That seems to be a lot of the questions that we've had. If there's any lingering questions, please feel free to type them in before we wrap up today. Is there any topic here that we didn't touch on that any of the panelists feel like you've been waiting for us to hit on, or is there something that we're missing? Please feel free to chime in.
Let me give
I have one.
example, perhaps of an opportunity, I think, for jump rope. The whole concept of fitness games, of fitness competitions, where jump rope can be a part of a larger group of fitness-related activities. That means partnering with other international federations, like maybe World Rowing, where they're doing indoor rowing with ergs. With the FIG, the International Gymnastics Federation, are doing things with parkour now, that sport. Things like kettleball and others, where a single fitness competition that involves different disciplines like jump rope, where there's a chance not for cities to be able to have an event that brings a variety of fitness-related activities, the potential of a educational symposium around it, and also the opportunity for a vendor and a sales expo associated with it, as well as the chance to engage and activate the citizenry of that city. So these events that jump rope might participate in, particularly with other fitness-related activities and sports, give an opportunity for a city to have a significant kind of event that combines an educational element, a commercial element, meaning sales of fitness-related equipment, engagement of the public and the community, especially youth, as well as the competition within jump rope, and doing that with other sports that have some level of similarity to it, meaning they really hit upon the element of fitness generally. So I come back to jump rope's great opportunity is the level of fitness related to doing it. As I say, a lot of swimmers have found out 1 minute with jump rope is they'd rather get back in the water and swim about 5,000 yards instead of going with jump rope. I think it's an opportunity. I know it's come out of a tragic situation, but I think there's a great chance to partner with other international federations and other sports to create events that cities will be really interested in hosting, and to make it into something bigger and more robust than ever before.
Dale, thanks so much for your perspective.
Reply.
I have a takeoff on a part of what Dale was saying about the opportunity and the commercial side. Listening to the conversation, I've been thinking that with the virtual competitions and the capability from a technology perspective to track and see how many people are logging on and viewing and streaming and becoming involved in the sport. And in doing that, it could help in terms of negotiating better sponsorship or commercial partnership agreements from a variety of suppliers, because you can actually say, okay, we may have, I'll just throw a number out, 1,000 people at a particular venue, but we have 1 million streaming online from around the world, which could help in those kind of negotiations, as I've been just thinking about the financial side of it. So just taking it as a bit of a, spinning it around, but taking off from what Dale has been saying about, out of this, tragic circumstance, there's really an opportunity, potentially.
Great, Warren, thank you so much. Denise, did you have any closing thoughts?
I was just thinking, and I apologize for the pause there, but I was reflecting on some of Warren's comments around the opportunities that can present themselves commercially as a result of introducing the live streamed competitions. And my brain was going in two directions. One is that I had the privilege of working with Skate Canada Alberta at the time where they were introducing live streaming. And what we saw was that there was as much or more interest in the grassroots level competitions as there was in the elite events, simply because the reach then tended to include more of people like classmates, parents, family, people who could relate to the athletes at the community level. So I really do believe that there is a significant opportunity there, and we don't necessarily need to be looking only at our elite athletes, but at our grassroots, because it just attracts a different audience and a different level of interest, and it tends to have those larger numbers because family tunes in to see the athletes compete. And then my brain went into a different direction to a meeting that I had this week where we were asked, I work with Special Olympics Alberta, and we have done quite a bit of online, and there has been interest from our funders and our supporters as to, it's always metrics. What do the numbers look like? How can we show continued growth? So monitoring the number of participants in all of the virtual workouts and series and competitions that have been held have become really important. So I think it's something that's important to start tracking now, as opposed to in a couple of months trying to go back and figure out what those numbers were. In terms of participants who connected through social media or other streaming. So I think there's wonderful opportunities there. I think skills and drills is the term that we're using out here, as opposed to having to have virtual competitions mirror the traditional in-person competitions. So let's look at what are the skills that our athletes need to be developing, and perhaps looking at ways to integrate competitions along those lines, as opposed to trying to replicate what's been done in the past, which we know it's going to be very, very difficult to do.
Denise, thank you so much. Any other final thoughts from our panelists on our discussion this morning, this evening, wherever you are?
I'd probably just offer two quick thoughts. Yeah. There are some issues around social media. Given our primary demographics for our athletes start at, the 8 and under, and then run through to competitive athletes, in the 30s issues. And then we keep a number of people past that age, but our primary range, if you like, is between 8 and under and say 25. Half of our audience there we can't get at via the social media because of the problems that have come with social media issues. But I think that we have to work out how we can capitalise on people's willingness to engage with technology. And that technology might simply be by the apps that we're using, or by the wearable technology that we're using, or by sharing of community forums like we're seeing today. I remember 2 years ago, FISAC tried to hold their board meeting online, and whilst it was received, I wouldn't say it was as successful as the panel you've run today, Amy. So people are getting more used to this technology. And so if there's a way we can leverage that technology in our sport, I think they're a great fit. And I think if we can continue to work on our demographics and then introduce that sport, it will naturally grow. And so I'm not sure how we do, but that momentum, I think, is important to keep that wave going now that people are more comfortable and familiar with it.
Absolutely. Luke, thank you so much. Any other final thoughts from anyone? Well, I think we've brought a lot of really, really great information here to one central location today. And it's been a very, I think, informative and enlightening conversation for all of us. Thank you to everybody who has participated here in the chat, on the sidebar, to our panelists from all over the world. It's been great to hear all of your different perspectives. And I really appreciate you taking the time as we find a way to move forward. And of course, we didn't solve all of the world's problems today, but I think we brought a lot of great topics together, and hopefully we can continue to have conversations like this. Sean?
Great. Thank you so very much, Amy. Please, guys, do me a favor in applauding Amy Simpson for conducting a great panel. We really
Thank you. No need.
Really, thank you so very much for an excellent job. And of course, to all of our panelists, I want to thank you also very much. Luke Wynn Stanley, who's a board member of IGRU, we thank you sincerely. Denise Fisher, I knew I recognized you because I think you and I used to compete against each other back in the day. So very good to have you, of course. And Nikia, thank you so very much from Russia, being an athlete's voice. We really thank you. Also to Andre Casellica, thank you for your continued innovation around all of our technologies and being willing to share them for the development of our sport. So thank you so very much. And also to Warren from Marsh, we really thank you for your expertise and your continued partnership even going forward as our sport engages risk management in a more deliberate fashion. So thank you so very much. And also to the notorious Dale Neuberger. Most folks don't realize he's understated. If you knew his background and his resume, you would know who you're really talking to. He has been in the room where it happens, so to speak, from the Olympic level to even the local level. He's a wealth of knowledge, and so we thank you for sharing with us today all of your expertise, and we thank you for your continued partnership as well. To everyone watching and participating, again, we thank you so very much. IGRU is better today for having this conversation. I, as president, learned a lot here today. And will certainly take it with me moving forward. Of course, we would like to thank our partners, GACE, for being a great support for IJRU as they continue to help us move forward. They have great resources. A lot of the questions and comments that have been stated here, GACE has said, hey, we can reach out to them and they can help us in that space. So we will continue to do that. I would like to say that everything we do, the solutions, it won't be perfect. I want to say that it won't be perfect, but it will certainly have some key aspects in it that, again, mirror our core values. The key one that I heard today was about inclusion. I believe it's not an either or. It's not a elite athletes or younger athletes. It's both. And I believe that we can be inclusive and wrap our arms around our entire community. The other thing I heard today was opportunity. I really appreciate the optimism that I heard here today, that this is an opportunity and we should look at it as such. I certainly will. I will certainly take that to our board and to our working groups to see the opportunity that we do have in moving forward. And it's a multifaceted approach. I believe that we're going to be able to make our sport better as a result. Again, I want to thank all the panelists and all the people who've commented here today. You will be receiving a survey that we want to hear from your thoughts about this particular panel and additional panels that will be coming forward. We want you to sign up next week for our diversity and inclusion panel. That will be another great discussion around how we as a sport can be more intentionally inclusive as we wrestle with many aspects around some divisions that we have within humanity. Sport is a great opportunity to have all humanity come together and work together. So we're excited about that panel as well. Again, we thank you all so very much. Can't tell you how thankful I am to really hear this discussion. So with that being said, we want to thank you all and bid you all a good night, good evening, good morning, or afternoon, wherever you find yourself in the world. All the best. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.